There, can you guys still hear me? There, can you guys still hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. All right.
Kanasia, I don't have a bio from you.
Yep, we can hear you. All right.
I see it, never mind.
Where's your wife, Harvey?
She is just setting up a computer, and she'll be there right in about less than a minute.
Okay.
Where's your sister, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm coming.
I can't trust her to be out somewhere. I can't let her be later than me. I'm the one known to be late.
It's all right. All right. As soon as she gets on, we're already streaming on YouTube.
Yeah, I noticed
So
that.
if you guys want to tell anybody, it's YouTube/Africentric TV.
Okay.
And folks, if they don't want to go try to register now and do all that stuff, so
Is this going to be on YouTube though?
yeah, afterwards it will remain on YouTube. Yes. You okay with that, Jared?
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Okay, Delvina Bernard is here. And you could,
I see Crystal coming in too.
just, I think we're getting ready to start now. All right, Vina, can you, so we're going to ask everyone who's not speaking, when you're not speaking, to turn off your mics.
Absolutely.
And in fact, we like the idea of seeing you all. If there are any bandwidth issues, we will let you know, but if there are no bandwidth issues, it's nice. We kind of wanted to make this look like when we're in the library, we actually see our audience. So it's, you know, it kind of creates for that a bit of, what would you say? A personal touch, right? So it's nice to have your faces with us. Hopefully we won't get any bandwidth issues. All right, so Madam Moderator, I'm going to pass over to you, and I'm just going to deal with the technical controls. And Ms. Bernard, are you ready? She's giving opening remarks.
Is Delvina with us?
I see her picture, but she's muted.
Okay, I'll wait on Delvina. I'm Barb Hamilton, and I'll be moderating this evening. And I'm going to shortly turn over to another colleague of mine, Delvina Bernard, to give welcoming remarks. And before she does that, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the unsurrendered and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. And I also like to recognize that we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors who have gone before us. And if it was not for the blood that they shed, we would not be here today as we begin to unlock the genius within. So I'm going to turn it over to my sister, friend, and mentor, Delvina Bernard, to bring us welcoming remarks.
Good afternoon, well, evening, everybody. Happy African Heritage Month. We're really happy to be able to present this panel. It's a bit different this year from previous years, where we are in our second home, I guess, maybe first home, the North Branch Library, where much activity happens, but technology is on our side as we all make our way through this pandemic. And we're just very pleased to still be able to offer this program of activity. So welcome one and all on behalf of the Africentric Learning Institute. And as Sister Barb has said, it is always important to pay honor to our African Nova Scotian ancestors, the Loyalists, the Maroons, the refugees, who, if they were not as strong as they were, we wouldn't have the life that we have here today as people of African descent. And absolutely echo the sentiment that we are on unceded territory, and that the work of the Africentric Learning Institute takes place on this unceded territory. And we at the Africentric Learning Institute support all efforts by Canada's First Peoples to receive justice, to receive truth, and to receive reconciliation. So with that, we will move ourselves on. Just a little note to say that the Africentric Learning Institute was established in 2006. And we're dedicated to promoting the rights and interests of African peoples to practice their culture in all ways that we know and have learned about ourselves. And that's the simplest way to put it. I'm not going to say much more. I was asked, though, to just try to, and I think Dr. Barb will probably go a bit on this too, to be able to, for tonight's purpose, offer a working definition of the term Africentric immersion. And I was also asked to do so in language that is plain and simple. So the best attempt that I can come up with to say that it would be, and let me just, before I even say that, I think most of us tuned in are familiar with the concept of French immersion, where you have students in a school building where most are doing their studies in English, but then there will be students in the same building who are learning all of their subjects by using the French language and being more indoctrinated in the French culture. Africentric immersion has a very similar type of presentation. So the definition being offered here tonight, just for our working purposes, is it would be a program of academic study to be implemented in a public school, which offers African Nova Scotian learners the option to meet all provincial subject matter outcomes using teaching materials, and by that we mean books and resources and films, and videos and speakers and teachers, etc., where Black people are the key subjects. So an example of that, if you were doing English and a novel study, then you would be using a novel written by an African person of African descent, or you'll be doing poems by people of African descent. If you were doing a music course, for instance, perhaps you would be studying, you would learn musical notation and how to read music and how to sing, but using our music, jazz, blues, R&B, or Blacks who excelled in classical, like Portia White and Anderson, Anderson. If you were doing science, we would be looking at Blacks in science, but we would also learn the fundamental laws of science, but talking about our relationship to the subject matter as African people. And math, and we have a great example of that happening in our city at Auburn High School under the direction and tutelage of Principal Karen Hudson, where we are learning math, but using examples, problems, and the principles of mathematics, but using our cultural and historical references to be able to approach those subjects. And the same would happen for social studies in terms of learning these type of things. So that essentially is the definition that we're working with. It's an opportunity to immerse our students in subjects where they learn all the outcomes, and they would be immersed in their African culture and philosophy, as opposed to, and this may be sound controversial, as opposed to being immersed in Eurocentric culture and values, because essentially our public schools do really promote the cultures of Europe as opposed to the cultures from other places. And we're basically saying it would just be an opportunity to engage our students and bring out their genius if they could learn more about the people they are and what they've contributed to world history and the intellectual world as we know it. So that's the definition. Again, I welcome you. I now turn this over to our moderator, Dr. Barb Hamilton Hinch, who will be able to take us through the rest of the evening. And thank you.
Thank you, Delvana. I noticed that we're going to be showing some short video clips, and I think that is at this point. Does anybody want to introduce the video clips that we're going to be watching?
Sure, I'll do that. We're just going to watch, we have 3 video clips throughout the night. The first one we're going to show you, or at least the first 2, will be sort of a short presentation on some of the activities that we had this summer with respect to Africentric pop-up schools. And so I'll start off with just giving you a little window into some of the activities that we had this summer. So here we go with, let me line up the first one. All right, so that was, as you could see, a lot of excitement. You could see that we also had a session with parents as well. because we felt that there's a need to also educate parents while we're also educating our children in what Afrocentricity is all about. And you saw that the clips from two different events. One was the pop-up school involving elementary, I think it was the age of 3 or 4 to 7, and then the art academy, which involved students from 7, I believe it was, to 15 or thereabout. And lots of excitement, as you can see from the way the kids are engaging. And I'm sure Natalie will talk a bit more about that because she was one of the instructors with the elementary pop-up school. And as you could see, everyone was actually quite involved with this. All right, so Barb, back to you, and then we will show Dr. Molefi Asante a little bit later on in the program.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey. This is such an exciting time to be doing this tonight, and I'm so honored and humbled to be moderating this with such amazing presenters or panelists. And so I'm going to first introduce all our panelists, and then I'll ask them each to share with us 7 minutes or so. And then we'll open it up for some questions and answers from those who are joining us online. There's also opportunity to use, I believe, the chat if you want to communicate with us as well. And we hope that you enjoy this evening. And for some of you, you might have joined us when we did our Afrocentric learning last time, where we talked about Afrocentric schools and education. And so this is a continuation from that conversation, as well as looking more at unlocking the genius of Black learners. So you're going to have the opportunity to hear from some of our students and some of our parents and some of our teachers who help facilitate our pop-up school. So I'm going to first introduce Natalie to you. So Natalie Hodgson is an African Nova Scotian school counselor, teacher, and author. Natalie has taught elementary education for 6 years and has been a school counselor for 3 years. She also works independently as a cultural assessor, and in this role, she completes impact of race and cultural assessments for individuals involved in the justice system, a very, very important role, and one that is becoming more and more known nationally. Natalie's favorite role is being a mother, and so many of us can attest to that. She loves theater, dance, early literacy, animals, and nature. So welcome, Natalie. Our other guest this evening is Wendy Poitras. And Wendy's also an elementary school teacher. She currently teaches at Shabakto Heights and has many attributes and has been teaching for over 25 years in our public school system. Wendy is also an artist and has been known to design many of our emblems that you're seeing across our province. As at Dalhousie University, Wendy played an important role in designing or helping to design our new staff that we use for graduation ceremonies. Wendy is also a long-standing historical African Nova Scotian mother, sister, auntie, who hails from the community of Uniacke Square. And I have known her for a very long time. I'm really looking forward to her inspiration and words that both her and Natalie will bring this evening. I've also had the pleasure of getting to know 2 amazing students and are so happy that they agreed to share with us their insight and their experiences. And without them, this evening would not be possible. So I'd like to acknowledge Tanasia. And Tanasia is a grade 12 student who will be going off to St. Mary's University. And she plans to study psychology. She works part-time at the Bay and is currently a French immersion student and doing very, very well academically, and has been engaged in the Afrocentric programs that we offer, as well as the one at Auburn School. The other student that is joining us this evening is Dreyon, and Dreyon is a grade 12 student and also going on to St. Mary's University. So St. Mary's is already getting 2 of our Black geniuses come September. Dreyon has committed to St. Mary's University basketball team. And in speaking to this young man, I know he's been sought after by many universities, both academically and for his athletic ability. He's interested in taking business, and he also traveled to Toronto for basketball, and he works part-time at the World Gym. So I want to thank all our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedule to join us this evening and to share with us your words of advice, encouragement, and knowledge that is in each one of you. So I'm first going to ask Natalie if she wouldn't mind being our first panelist this evening. And I'm going to mute myself as well, and I'll be back after. Thank you, Natalie.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Everyone on our Zoom tonight and everyone watching live or who can check in later. I'm just putting my little timer on so that I try to stay within the 7 minutes because sometimes I can talk a lot. So I'm just going to put that on and try to stick within that as close as I can. So like the introduction said, I'm a school counselor for HRCE. I'm also a teacher. So I was a teacher before I became a school counselor. I'm a cultural assessor and I'm an author. And I am just, the idea of Africentric immersion and Africentric learning in the school, I am just, I live, die, and breathe by it. Like it's in my bones, it's in my body, it's in my veins, and I'm just so excited for it. And I'm going to say right now that it already exists, and it's starting in September because I'm speaking that into existence. And so we will have this happening for our children because this is important and this is what they need. In the school systems, from a parent perspective as well as from an educator's perspective, it's very clear to see, you know, even from an educator's perspective, I can talk about the achievement gap. A lot of our students, you know, not all, but there is an achievement gap out there. There's been overrepresentation of Black learners on IPPs. This is, you know, throughout Canadian and American literature to, you know, kind of point that out, that this is what's going on in the system. And so when you have a system that's not designed for you, well, in theory, you're going to struggle. It's going to be harder for you to succeed because it wasn't built for you in the first place. That's not to say that everyone working in the system, you know, other white colleagues are not doing the best that they can do, or some of them not doing what, you know, what they feel is in best interest. But when you don't have the materials and you don't have the lived experience, and then there's those connections aren't there, it's very hard to meet the needs of our students. You know, even in my work now as a cultural assessor, I can speak to the school to prison pipeline. As you can say, there's a lot of, you know, I do cultural assessments on a lot of young Black men who, you know, through their learning about their cultural story and their, you know, their whole social history, it started in education. So it started in the school system where, you know, there was a lot of, you know, high suspension rates, being disconnected, not seeing themselves in the school with the teachers, with the curriculum. And so all this kind of things kind of started on a path that led them into the position that they might have been in. I know Wendy's going to talk about representation, but that is huge. That is so huge. As a parent at home, my daughter is our home environment is so culturally rich, right down to my daughter's toys. All her dolls look like her, right? That's important to me. When I get dolls, they need to look like her. All of her, like her books, I strategically buy books with, you know, brown characters. She needs to see her complexion, her beautiful brown skin in books. And, you know, and so when I don't have those books, I get books with like animals, you know, little rabbits or something like that, or doggies and things like that, because I'm strategically buying books that show people represented by who she is and what she looks like. And I'm always reiterating that. That's so big in our household. Right down to our TV shows like Doc McStuffin, and, you know, so there's some strategic things. And I'm not saying that I just, you know, make her, you know, be this little, you know, robot, whatever. It's just, I'm introducing her to things. And of course, you're going to like what you see as similar to you. As a educator that was in the Africentric pop-up this summer, I can attest to how valuable it is for our students, how necessary it is. They need to see themselves represented in the books, in the curriculum, in their learning, through their other peers, through their teachers, through their leaders. They need to see themselves, and they need to see themselves successful. And the only way to do it is to be submerged with it, and to have just to have that as the highlight of importance in what you're doing. As a parent, my daughter was also participated in the Africentric pop-up, and she's 4 years old, and she's lovely and got a big, huge personality. But now she's participating in all kinds. I take her everywhere. I've taken her to pup shows, the library, everything, ever since she's been, old enough to sit on my lap. She's been everywhere. And she's, not typically shy, but when it's a new environment, she's a little bit shy. She's a little bit kind of like with mommy until she gets used to her surroundings and what's going on. But when I brought her to the Africentric pop-up, she only knew one other child there. And she was so comfortable. And so there's three words, I guess, or three phrases I'm going to use to describe her experience. And I would say that this describes the experience of the other children that were there. Number one, my daughter felt culturally safe. Everyone in the room looked like her, from the other children to the teachers to the people, all these caregivers, all these people in the room, they all look like her. She felt completely culturally safe. Number two, she felt comfortable. So with that culturally safe space was an atmosphere of comfort. So she felt at home. It was like, hey mom, is this my second home? Are we just moving in here? She felt at home. And number three, she felt confident. She felt confident in the activities, in the things she was doing, learning with the other students. And it was beautiful to see. It was beautiful to see, from the glimpse of my eye, because really, I, was giving some of the other children more attention because I give her all the attention at home. So she didn't need to cling to me. But every time I look over, I can just see those three elements in her: the culturally safe, the comfortableness, and the confident. And it was radiant in the room. Miss Vanessa, she was one of the other teachers there. We saw her in the video. She's amazing. She's wonderful. And, she talked in her program. Sorry, I'm just shutting off my alarm. It says my 7 minutes is up, but I just, let me wrap up. So Vanessa she had a student in there that was really, at the beginning, they spoke to how shy they were in the regular public school system. And this student got up in front of their whole, all the other students there and read a whole book to everybody. And that was so amazing. And we all remember that experience. And Barb, one more thing I want to say.
Yes.
At the end, you taught all the children this beautiful song, and my daughter went home and literally her and her friend would not stop singing it for about 24 hours. I have it on video because they just kept singing it, and it just speaks to how important and how valuable and how needed Africentric immersion or Africentric schooling is. And so I probably have tons more to say, but I'll stop right there to give other people a chance to speak. But I'll just wrap it up by saying this exists, and I've spoken it into existence. So, we'll see everybody in September with the program. I will gladly leave my guidance counseling role and go back to teaching to be a part of this.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Those were fantastic words and very inspirational. And so glad that your daughter remembered the song, and maybe we'll learn it again at the end of our presentation today. So thank you. Our next presenter is going to be Tanasia. So I'm going to now turn it over to you, Tanasia. And we did see a little bit of the bandwidth playing around, so people can just be cognizant of that as we move through it. So thank you, Natalie. Tanasia, over to you.
Hi, I'm Tanasia. I am in the first group of the cohort at the Auburn Drive. And I feel really happy and grateful to have been a part of the first group, because I remember when I first heard about the cohort, I was a little reluctant at the beginning just because it was something new, something that hadn't really been done before. But I remember I was pushed by the principal, Miss Hudson, because I knew her before that, and by my mom. And it definitely ended up being a really good decision and had like many positive impacts on my life, because with the cohort, I definitely think that I became like so more confident and just so more like comfortable in the classroom. Like when I first started, I didn't really know anybody in the class, and I quickly made a lot of new friends and made a lot of new bonds that I still have today that I'm thankful for. In the classroom, it's like I quickly learned that it's like its own little community. Like everyone that was in the class already knew each other before that, but I was quickly welcomed in and made to feel like at home. And I didn't feel like an outsider. Like I immediately felt like I was a part of something. And with the cohort, the confidence that I got, like I used to be like really wouldn't share in class, like just kept to myself. But the cohort, like the teachers, they give you that push that you need and the confidence to want to share in class and want to participate in the class discussions. And I definitely think a lot of other people in the class got that confidence from the cohort as well. And another positive thing about the cohort, I would say, is that we go on like a lot of outings. Like sometimes we would go on like trips to Dal, or like, and being able to see people that look like us, that are successful and that are in the field that they want to be in, is definitely like a positive image for us to look at. And I feel like it helps us. It helps us see that if we, you know, work hard and put our mind to something, achieve all the things that we want to achieve. And another opportunity we had was to go to Toronto to attend the Black Brilliance Conference. And I think that was a really good and memorable experience that we'll all carry forever, because we went there and we got to go to the conference, and the conference taught us a lot about, you know, our culture, and it just gave us a platform to talk to other people that are our age and our peers, and just share our stories. I think that was a really good thing that we got to do. And the cohort, like the teachers, are really like involved, and I find like the classrooms are different than, like they operate different than the other classes I'm in. Like we all tend to just work together in the classes that I'm in with the cohort. Like we all are always there to help each other and support each other in any way we can, and all want to see each other do the best. Whereas in like other classes I'm in, it's more like everyone just works on their own. And there's definitely like a lot of positive things that I can say about the cohort. Like I'm happy that I did it, and it definitely was a good decision. And just being in it made me realize how far I can go, and that if I just keep pushing, that I can do whatever I really put my mind to. And there's like a lot of other things that I can say about the cohort, but overall, I'd say that anybody who has the opportunity to participate in one should. And I'd like to see the program like implemented in other Black students, given the opportunity to experience it, because I definitely think it's something that everyone should get the opportunity to. It's something that all Black students could benefit from.
Thank you, Tanisha. That was fantastic. And there'll be some more time for you to share some of what through our question and answers. And we appreciate what you did share with us. And it gives us a little bit of an insight into the Afrocentric cohort at Auburn High School. And I have the pleasure of being able to do some research around the benefits of Afrocentric education and schooling in Nova Scotia. And hearing a lot of fantastic things about the benefits of Afrocentric education and the contributions. And you have just validated what some of the stories that we are hearing. So thank you for your words this evening. I'm now going to turn it over to Dreon to also give us some words as a student heading off to St. Mary's University after this year. Dreyon, over to you.
My name is Dreyon. I am again with I was the first group with the cohort at Auburn Drive. In the beginning, I didn't really think I could really do it because I knew it was academic classes and stuff like that. But again, Miss Hudson, I knew Miss Hudson outside of school, kind of with my dad and grandparents and stuff. And she just basically said you're in it, I have faith, I know that you can do it, kind of thing. And I was just down to myself. And then I just finally said yeah, I would do it. Coming in in grade 10, right off the rip, doing academic classes, I said, it was kind of tough, just starting off, because I just felt it'd be harder and I didn't really have the support. But that changed quickly. Just looking back from junior high and even to grade 10, I had Miss Hudson, she was always there, supporting us no matter what, just telling us we can do it, no matter what. She was always supporting us, whatever we needed, she was there. Even after school, help at lunch times, she was setting it up, making sure we all succeeded. So that's a big shout out to Miss Hudson. I really appreciate her for that. But on the other hand, being in the cohort, it really I really see improvements in not even just my grades in school and stuff, but me as a person, just me just talking to people and stuff like that. I just grew a lot as an individual. I think the cohort is really good program and good class setting. We're all there for each other in the classroom. It's everybody that's like us in our colors, so we're not shy to raise our hand, or even if it's a wrong answer, but our peers will help us out, but we don't feel embarrassed, I guess, kind of thing. Just where we're all together as one, and we're all a family, so we can all pick each other up and help each other. And we went away, Tanisha was saying, to the Black Brilliance Conference in Toronto. It was a really good conference. We got to see to learn about a lot about our background and where we come from, and we got to see in the Black Brilliance Conference, we got to see Toronto and how they did things and stuff like that, and how we all are similar. How we all got together, we did activities and just talked about how it is to be our skin color and stuff, and the challenges that we face. But overall, it was really good. Even also, I'm going to jump on another thing Tanisha said, going to universities and stuff and just seeing people our color and all they went through, as even being our ages and younger youth, even probably certain teachers saying they won't be able to make it, or downing them or treating them differently because of the skin color. But then they really just fought through that, and they never let nobody tell them any different. And they never really let nobody take their smarts away from them, and they just kept pushing through. And clearly they pushed through, and they're successful today because they know they're in university doing big things, and they even moved on. And I feel that's what the cohort really helped us with. And the cohort definitely prepared me for the future. I can speak for myself, because I never really thought, to be honest, that I would be committing to a basketball team at St. Mary's and going there and studying at a university. And I really feel the cohort really did help me with that, and maybe just succeed and just work better towards my schooling and everything. But yeah, the cohort definitely is really good. The teachers are really supportive. Our history teacher, Max, they're really, really supportive. So shout out to them too. They're really good. But yeah, the cohort is really good, and I just thank Ms. Hudson and everybody are part of it. Keep doing what they're doing for not even just our grade, but the ones that are coming up, because it's definitely useful. And it's just good to see us, our culture and people our skin color shine and do big things, because there's too many of us that think we short ourselves that we can't do this and we can't do that, but we just got to put our minds to it, come together and grow, and just, I feel that we can do it. So I just think, yeah, everybody in that, and yeah.
Thank you, Drayon. Great words and great shout out to your teachers for the inspiration and modeling that they have done for you. And both of you acknowledged Ms. Hudson's contribution to your education, and we'll have lots of opportunity in our Q&A to talk more about that and to share some of our stories and our growth. And I know that, Drayon, you also participated in our Afrocentric pop-up. So in our Q&A, hopefully we'll hear more about the pop-up and your involvement in the pop-up and perhaps the outcome from that. Right now, I'll turn it over to Wendy to bring us some words and encouragement and experience as an African Nova Scotian teacher, educator, and parent. So thank you, Wendy.
All right, thanks, Dr. Burr. Welcome this evening, and thanks for taking the time to join us in talking about such an important topic, and that is education. So I want to be able to talk about what has happened since the panel that I sat on last year. In the panel that I sat on last year, we were hashing out some ideas around Africentric immersion program, as well as a model for an elementary Africentric program, in essence, an Africentric school. Since that time, and with everything that's happened with COVID, we were able to meet often and talk about how we could execute some of these ideas and philosophies. And what we ended up doing is having the 2 pop-ups over at the Old Home for Colored Children, an historic site, which lent a certain ambiance and feeling to the experience that the students had there on the property. I witnessed both of the events and was there to help out, but allowed Vanessa and Natalie to conduct the sessions. And I have to be honest, one of the reasons I did that is because I do teach full time, and in the summertime, I'm not really that interested in managing students. So we get there, and my experience is the exact opposite. There's no managing of students. These students are absolutely amazing. I was thrilled to be around them. I just wanted to get to know them. I want to know more about them. I probably bothered them more than they bothered me. So it was a really great experience to have parents on board and on the property, and just as interested as their students, or sorry, as their kids in learning and engaging. So I also want to talk about the experience that I had this summer as well, along with the pop-ups, was the African Nova Scotian Freedom School. So the African Nova Scotian Freedom School was founded. There were, I think, about 7 or 8 of us that came on board in probably late June and developed a curriculum and executed that curriculum during the month of August. And the Africentric Learning Institute also supported that program as well. We had 25 students, and some of the topics that we looked at were politics, history and culture, leadership and activism. And the most inspirational part to both of these programs, the pop-up school and the African Nova Scotian Freedom School, was the representation for me. I think representation is so important. And actually, up until just recently, I had no idea how important representation was and is, not only for me as a student growing up in the public school system, but for me as an adult currently, how important representation is. And so I happened upon some statistics. I think I mentioned this last time, that if a student has 1 Black teacher between the 3rd and 5th grade, they are 39% more likely to graduate from high school. So just imagine if they had more than 1 Black teacher, what those statistics would look like. We hear a lot about the achievement gap and the distance between the mainstream and a lot of our African Nova Scotian learners. And I had the opportunity to move around from school to school for about a 5-year period, which was advantageous for me because I got to see a lot of communities, got to know a lot of people, and got to participate in schools that had wide, in terms of diversity, a wide berth of students coming from all over the world. So currently I'm at a school in just off the peninsula, and we have quite a few, we actually have a community of Nigerian students. So when we're looking at the achievement gap, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that not all Black students fall into that achievement gap. Actually, in my experience and my observations, students that might be coming from other countries, African countries or Caribbean countries, tend to do better than we do as African Nova Scotians. I thought about this for a long time, actually, since I was in university. Myself, my best friend Leanne and I went to Acadia together and kind of got lost in our first year just because it was such a different environment than we were used to. And what we noticed is that the students, the international students, the Black international students, seemed to navigate the university a lot better than we did. They were getting better marks. They just seemed more comfortable. And we always thought that it was because of, in our 20-year-old minds, we always thought that it was because of privilege. They're able to afford the international fees, and, maybe they've gotten a private education in the country that they were coming from. And it was only until recently I just thought, oh, gee, just Nigerian students come from Bermuda, doing well. I wonder if this has something to do with representation. These students are coming from countries where they actually have Black teachers. So representation matters. Having a Black teacher, actually, and this is based in research, having a Black teacher, and it's American research, having a Black teacher raises the test scores of Black students. It changes the way Black students behave. It significantly decreases suspension rates. These statistics come from a study that was done over a 5-year period in North Carolina with 100,000 Black boys. And also, Black students are more likely to be assigned to giftedness if their teacher is Black. So representation does matter. And an example that I'll use or tell you about is one of the best compliments that I've ever received was when I worked at a school in Dartmouth, and it was a P, and I taught grade, Natalie and I taught together. I think Natalie was teaching grade primary and I was teaching grade 1. And there were some older girls in grade 8, and they were in another part of the school, but every once in a while I'd see them, and I would catch this one little girl in particular staring at me. And one day I caught her kind of looking at me. She looked at me, and then she looked at me again, and then she said something to her friend. So I went up to her and asked her, like, hey, what's up? And she said, oh my gosh, she apologized, and she said, I keep thinking you're my mother. Every time I look up, I see you in the hallway, I get a glimpse of you, and I have to do a double take because I think you're my mother, and then I realize that you're not. One of the best compliments that I ever received. Wouldn't it be nice if our Black students could look down the hallway, and see someone that resembled their mother or their auntie or their grandmother or a neighbor? White children get to do that every day. They get to see the resemblance, the representation in the school, in their classroom, basically in every facet of society. They get to see people that look like them. And so I know that it's important as a student to be able to have Black representation, but also as a lifelong learner, as an adult, it's very important too. So my experiences as a African Nova Scotian teacher are very similar to the experiences of African Nova Scotian students. One of the reasons that I'm so thrilled to be a member of ALI is because I get to see and converse with and build programs and initiatives with Black academics. It's something that I didn't have the opportunity to do as I was growing up. I was the first person in my family to graduate university, and I've always been interested in academics, and I've always been interested in that intellectual part of conversing and figuring things out. And so with the ALI, I get to do that. With the pop-up schools, I got to collaborate, with Vanessa and Natalie. And with the the African Nova Scotian Freedom School, I had the opportunity to hash ideas out with great minds like Malik Adams and Karen Hudson and Kim Kane. And so representation still matters as a lifelong learner to me. So I am just so thrilled that I'm able to be in a position where I can look up and strive to be like these people that are so inspiring to me. So if representation matters this much to me as, a woman who's, well, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but if representation means this much to me, then how impactful is it to our students?
Right.
Like, where would I have been if I would have had that representation, if I would have been around that academic settings at an earlier age, as opposed to, doing a master's in Africentric leadership and really understanding what it is to be a Black intellectual. So I just want to say that if it matters to students, it matters to us as well. So when we create these Africentric environments, whether it be an Africentric school or a pop-up, then it puts us in a position where we can consolidate ideas and come up with initiatives and programs so that we can better help our community.
Thank you, Wendy. You said so many inspiring words, and I remember Wendy and I did our education degree, and I remember when I was doing a placement and a student said to me, Miss Hamilton, please don't ever become a substitute teacher, because we're not nice to substitutes. We want you to stay as a teacher because we like you. And we don't get many Black teachers. And I had to explain to this lovely student, in order to be a full-time teacher, I sometimes have to be a substitute teacher. But thank you for letting me know that you don't think I should go be a substitute teacher and I should just go direct and become a teacher. So our children have a funny way of telling us how much they appreciate us in our representation. So a lot of what we heard tonight was around representation. So I have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask our panelists. And if any of our viewers or folks online have some questions, you can put them into the chat. But I'm first going to ask our panelists some questions, and I'll do a round of questions to each one of you, and then we'll go from there. So my first question is to you, Natalie, and you talked a lot about this in terms of you saw a difference in your child when they came to our Afrocentric pop-up school. And I love the three things that you said that you noticed instantly about your child in terms of cultural safety, comfortable, feeling at home, confident, and how you just seen this radiance in the room. And so in reflecting back on that and thinking about even within the public school system and you as a counselor, what are some critical factors that impact the confidence and achievement, do you believe, of African Nova Scotian learners in the school system? So how can we mirror what your child experienced in our school system in Nova Scotia?
Yes, so like Wendy said, one of the things is representation, right? We need to have teachers that look like us in our schools. It was so interesting to hear Wendy share that comment, because I too have a similar experience. As a learner, I only had one Black teacher, and it was my grade 1 teacher, and she was my favorite teacher. And if anyone ever said, why was she your favorite teacher? Because she looked like my mom. Because her hair was like my mom and her complexion was like my mom, and she just reminded me of my mom. So it's that comfortableness of being in that space. And she's always been my favorite teacher. And I can't even remember a whole lot about that grade 1 classroom, other than she reminded me of my mother. And so these are the factors that are important, right? We have the Black report. I don't know, if we look at where we're at with that, right? We still have, we don't have the amount of Black teachers we should have in the public school system. We still have teachers, some teachers struggling with having lower expectations for our students. So our students are not achieving their full potential because teachers are already having preconceived ideas about, when they're, interacting with our students, and, whether it's our language or our slang or our gestures that are misinterpreted. And so then, there's this lower expectation that wouldn't be there in an Afrocentric school, in an Afrocentric setting, because we would just, get our children and they would get us, and they wouldn't have to try to, hide some of the things about themselves, right? Some of our kids go to school and feel that they have to put on a different face or act a different way, because they think, well, if I act this way, I'm going to be judged like this, or I might get in trouble, or I might be called, we hear it all the time, even as a teacher. Like sometimes people will mistake our passion for aggression. Wendy knows what I'm talking about. We have conversations about this all the time, that sometimes when we're just passionate about something. So if I'm passionate about Africentricity, that can be interpreted by maybe a white colleague as that I'm being intimidating. And so our students feel, if we as educators in the system have these feelings of, feeling like other people are not understanding us culturally, our students are going through the same things. They are feeling like they're being targeted. They're feeling like they're not being understood. Yeah, so it's just all around important to have an Afrocentric setting right away before they go through the school system and have some of these experiences that that are unnecessary.
Thank you for that. Tanisha, I have a question for you, and you talked a little bit about this already. So what are some of the biggest barriers that you as a Black student has faced and in junior high and high school? And a second part to that question is, what do teachers need or schools need to unlock the genius within our Black students? So first question, what are some of the biggest barriers that you face or Black students face in junior high and high school? And then I'll ask my second question.
Barb, I noticed that Tanisha was just out and she had to be readmitted. I said, well, while you were asking the question, so I'm not sure if she actually fully got the question.
Okay.
Yeah. But she's back in now.
Is she back in now? Tanisha, are you okay to take one of the questions right now?
Yep, I didn't hear them though. Could you repeat them, please?
Yeah, I sure can. So thinking about yourself and appreciating your presentation, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers that Black students performing in junior high and high school are facing right now? And how can schools unlock the genius in African Nova Scotian students? Because obviously Auburn has been successful in doing that for you. So one of my first questions is, what are some of the biggest barriers that our Black students are facing, both in junior high and high school? If you can answer that question, please.
I think probably one of the biggest barriers is that we're like a lot of us, well, I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure there's other people who agree. A lot of us feel like we're learning in like a curriculum, and we're learning like from an approach that isn't necessarily like based like for us, like how do I we're learning from an approach that's not necessarily like catered or like geared towards like Black students. So like sometimes it could be hard to like relate or understand the materials that are given to us. And I feel like a lot of us would strive and produce like more quality work if we were like if we did relate and were like more engaged into the material that we were given.
Yeah, so I find that what Ms. Natalie said and what you're saying is very much so connected, both around representation and as well as Wendy, around representation, around books, around curriculum. And that's one of the important things that you shared with us around an Afrocentric education that you got through the cohort. And so thinking about those schools, and you also mentioned it in your presentation, that don't have an Afrocentric cohort, what ways do you think that they can unlock the genius that exists in our Black students? What would be some recommendations you might have? And there might be other teachers or schools on this call right now that you can give some advice as a Black student. How do they unlock the brilliance of our Black students?
I would say, like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be like all like a big change at once. I would say like mainly the biggest thing would be like just slowly incorporating like more about like Black history and like Black culture like into the curriculums. Like for history classes, like we do like a lot of like Eurocentric learning and less like Black like based stuff. Like for me, like I remember when I did Canadian history, and that's one of the classes we did with the cohort, like majority of the outcomes were like all like European based, and there's like a small section that was like, you know, but like that was like Africentric and like based on like Black people and the refugees and the Maroons and all that. So I think like even just slowly incorporating more of that into it. And then another thing would be like just even the teachers, like, because another thing for the cohort, like the teachers are so hands-on, and you know, they give us that one-on-one interaction and that one-on-one attention that we need. And the help doesn't only just like, it's not just in the classroom, like it extends outside the classroom, and the teachers and like Miss Hudson and the vice principal, like they all help us inside the classroom as well as out. So I think just knowing that you have that support inside, but even like, you know, it being able to extend outside the classroom is like a good feeling as well.
So to me, I hear the importance of relationship and the respect that goes both ways, and the fact that teachers don't just spend the time in the classroom to get to know you, but also spend some time outside the classroom to get to know you. So thank you for that. My next question goes on to Dreon. And Dreon, I wanted you to talk a little bit about your experience in the Afrocentric pop-up school, where you did a video. So what did you learn about yourself from attending the anti-racism video training? Can you tell me a little bit about your experience during the video that you developed? And you can share with us a little bit, if you want, about the video that you did develop from that program. Are you there with us, Dreon? Did we lose him, Harvey?
I'm looking
Yeah,
to
you'll have
see.
to probably come, you'll have to, I'll text him, get him to come back on.
Yeah, he looks like he probably thought after his presentation he could disappear.
Okay, well then I'll move on to Wendy.
He said he's at work, right?
While we wait for Dreon to come back on. And this is a prime example of our students having to multitask, both in terms of the education system, having to work, and then trying to engage in community. And this speaks to the resilience of people of African descent, that often that is our experience as students, is that we have to be going to work, being in school, and finding other ways to connect with our community. So I applaud Dreon for joining us while he's at work and for participating in this panel with us. And so whatever time he can give us, it is appreciated and valued. And if he's able to come back on, we welcome that opportunity to ask him some questions. But we also respect the need for employment. So Wendy, you talked about both your experience in terms of the African Nova Scotian Freedom School and the Afrocentric pop-up, and how important Afrocentric education is to you, both as a teacher and a mother, and someone who I also would consider that community activist around Afrocentric education. So since we introduced the idea of Afrocentric immersion, and you already talked about how ALI has approached from where we started last year to where we are now. One of the questions I want to ask you is, do you think that non-Black teachers can create an Afrocentric experience of young Black learners? Why or why not? And I think both you and Natalie talked about the fact we do not have very many Black teachers right now in our school system. So can non-Black teachers play a role in Afrocentric education?
I think they can, but I think that the foundation that our students need is they need to be able to see themselves represented. So I think it is of the utmost importance that students are taught at the elementary level, at the early years. They're taught by majority teachers and administrators that look like them. So I'm not saying that that can happen, but I think that it's a priority. I will take a stand and say that it is a priority that students have the opportunity to see teachers and administrators and guidance counselors that look like them. Representation matters a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to just ask you another question and work my way back. How can we make the reality of an Afrocentric elementary school happen? And we've been talking about this. So what would be 2 to 3 recommendations? And I know that Natalie already has spoken this into existence. She's ready to just start in September and make it happen. And so if we're not able to achieve Natalie's dream, what are some things we can do at the elementary level as soon as we go back to school, even those of us who may be teachers right now online, as soon as we start school tomorrow or next week or in September? What are some initiatives that we can do to make an Afrocentric elementary school happen? What are some suggestions you would have?
I think we should probably continue to do exactly what we're doing right now in the interim before we actually have the bricks and mortar school, is that we continue to create initiatives and programming that is designed by us, for us. And eventually the time will come, and I think in the very near future, we'll have our own building. But practically, what has to happen is we need to start small. We need to start with, and I mentioned this already, we need to start with a cohort of 20 primary students, and then move those 20 primary students in through to grade 1, and then take in another cohort of 20 until we eventually work our way up to the grade 6 level. And I think by that time, it's going to be quite a choice in terms of who we accept into the school. I think a lot of people are going to want to come. I don't think when we build it, they will come. Hopefully we have enough space for everyone who's interested in attending the Africentric school. The other thing that I think we need to do to make it happen, and it's very feasible, is we need to be able to build agency and create the funding that we need to actually build the school. So I know with the Nova Scotia, or the African Nova Scotian Freedom School, Rachel Zellers had started a campaign, and within a month, maybe a little less than a month, we were able to raise in excess of $20,000. So it's very doable. If the call goes out for the community to band together on such an important issue, I don't think there's going to be any issue at all in raising the money or finding the resources we need to at least start at the elementary level and then move on from there. So very feasible, very doable. There are some Black people in the community, people outside of the community that are interested in investing in such an important initiative. So as soon as we're ready, I think they'll be ready as well.
Thank you, Wendy. And so that's also a shout out and a call out to any of you that are joining us online or watching us through our YouTube video, that if you have financial resources that you'd like to throw your way to ALI Institute to build our Afrocentric school, we'd be more welcoming. If there are parents on this call who are like, I want my child to start an Afrocentric school in September of 2021 or September of 2022, we would also love to hear from you. As it says, it's small steps, but we have the belief and the commitment, as Natalie said, that we will get there, as well as Wendy. So we appreciate both your support and dialogue that you might want to have with ALI at this time. I don't see any questions in our chat yet. No. So I'm going to just throw it out right now to our audience to see if there's any questions. And I think Dr. Miller can unmute you. You might be able to unmute yourself if you want to ask questions personally, or if you want to put it in the chat, both are welcome. So I open it up to the floor right now. And if it's not a question, it could be a comment.
Barb, this is Malik. Can I ask a question?
Please do. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My question is, and everyone as usual is great in terms of what they said and great insight. And we talked a lot about representation and curriculum and all those things that obviously we're going to talk about when we address these issues. My question is, what would be some fundamental Afrocentric practices, whether it's in a pop-up school or an elementary school or whatever? So not the curriculum, not the representation, we all understand that, but what would be some of the actual practices that would be, for example, different than our European public school system now?
Malik, I'll just answer that with an example of some of the programming that we did this summer with the pop-up school. What I really loved about it is that it wasn't just, we weren't just interested in working with the students, we were interested in working with families. We're interested in working with the parents. So while Natalie and Vanessa were engaged with the students, Delvina and Dr. Barb were engaged with the parents. So it's, I think part of having an Afrocentric school is making it holistic. So not just dealing with the academic aspect, but dealing with the social aspect, dealing with the whole person, dealing with the mental, the physical, the emotional, all those things have to come into play. If I'm part of any Afrocentric school, one of the things that I will make sure happens is that our students are all on the same page in terms of nutrition. So, you know, dealing with the counseling aspect of it. So just kind of dealing holistically with what we normally deal with in our community, but just taking the place and the form of taking the place in an educational setting and taking the not only dealing with the instruction, but taking every facet of who we are as humans into play and into consideration so that we're dealing with whole people. So that's the difference for me.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on Wendy's comment, like, that's what it's all about to me too. It's just, it's holistic. And so it's that natural, what we bring naturally to the program and how we just respond culturally and meet the students' needs culturally. It just kind of happens because we're already in the community and, you know, doing things in the community from a cultural lens. So now we're just doing that in the education system. It doesn't seem put on. It doesn't seem, you know, scripted. It's not something where we're picking up a curriculum book or module, you know, like some things we might have in the school system where it's just like, okay, let's read this script by script. And I'm not saying all teachers do that. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that those things are available if a teacher would want something scripted. And so it would be none of that. It would just be what comes natural because this is what your lived experience is. So you're bringing that to the program.
And the other big thing for me that I experienced at the first pop-up was that we were teaching kids about their culture. And with unapologetically, without any excuses, the kids all looked the same. You know, we had a shared common history, shared culture, so we didn't have to worry about leaving anyone out. So we were teaching kids about their culture. So to me, that was the most inspirational and the most genuine aspect of being part of the Africentric pop-up. Is I outside of, you know, David Woods and CAYG and programming like that was really the first time that I actually was able to experience that.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge the comment in the chat, and if anyone, if Dreon didn't join us, I just ask that you express the gratitude that Miss Ann Johnson is expressing as a principal at Nelson Winder School, and she just wanted to do a shout out to the students and thanking them for their mentorship and their representation for the students in Nelson Winder Elementary. And indeed, it's important to start at a young age. And it's great to hear that the high school students are mentoring and being strong role models for the students at Nelson Winder. And in saying that, as a community, we know that we are in pain right now. And I just want us in our quiet time to think about the struggle that young people are going through. Their struggle with mental health, their struggle with acceptance, the struggle of what's happening in their lives personally, as we think about the passing of some of our young people who've gone too young. So I just want us to reflect on that as a community, because we know that when one hurts, we all hurt. And as a community, this has not been an easy past couple of weeks. So I just wanted to bring that up and reflect on that as we lift our young people up and strengthen them in whatever way we can. Harvey, I know you want to get in there and say something before we show our video, and then ask Karen Hudson for our closing remarks, our chair.
Sure. I just wanted to just piggyback on the comments that were made by Natalie and Wendy to Malik's question, which was what beyond the curriculum, which we know needs to be changed, beyond representation. I think if we were to adopt the African adage as a metaphor, which is that it takes the village to raise the child, so that we design our school as a village. And the reason why I say that is because I recall when our kids transitioned to Citadel High, I felt a real separation between parents and that school. It's almost like the school had a policy, whether it was it was like at the very least an implicit policy that parents are not necessarily welcome here. Because I remember the first day that I tried to bring something for, I believe it was in Zinga or maybe even Zamani. Somebody, either it was a teacher or whatever, who came to look at me with kind of surprise. I mean, what? Excuse me, like it's almost like, what are you doing here, right? It wasn't a welcoming sort of a statement, and it felt like it's almost like parents should kind of just drop off your kids and leave them to us and don't show up. And so somehow the only time parents show up is when there's trouble, right? And so if we were to use the metaphor of it takes the village, then how do we create the school as a village in itself, where parents and the students are actually sort of learning side by side, and that they engage in, you have a sort of a situation where kids are teaching parents and parents are also teaching kids and nurturing them. So there's this sort of two-way kind of communication where one is actually looking out for the other. Young people learn how to look after older folks, and older folks learn how to, share the wisdom and so on with younger people. And I saw that in action when I visited Brenda Degree's school in Chicago, because I'm sure some of you will recall that Brenda Degree was brought to Nova Scotia after I had visited her school, and we made a recommendation to Brad at the time to consider bringing her as a speaker. I went in to visit her school because I heard her on CBC talking about the Africentric program that she was running at her school. And when I went to visit a classroom, parents were in the classroom with the kids. So because you had some parents that work, some parents that don't work, you have some parents who have high levels of literacy, some parents who have low levels of literacy. And so in fact, you had parents learning side by side with the kids. And so actually elevating everybody at the same time. So I think these are some of the ideas that we could bring, but we have to have total control, because, the education system worry about insurance and issues of, who should be there and who should not be there, and privacy and all those sorts of issues. But when we could design our own school, we could actually use the village as a metaphor and create a different kind of learning experience where both parents and kids actually learn simultaneously, as opposed to children don't want to tell their parents what grades they get, because the school encourages that separation between parents and children, right? In some ways. So I just thought that I just mentioned that as a key difference that you can get if you create this Afrocentric school.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey.
Dr. Barb, can I ask a question of Wendy before we depart?
Sure.
Okay. Awesome. I just want to say that first of all that I spent 2 hours last night on a Zoom call, just a private Zoom call with Dr. Adrian Dorrington, who lives in Washington, who was one of the principal instructors in the Africentric Institute that we ran for several years in North Preston. And we were just reminded of, how important it is to have this kind of knowledge for the people. And it was a wonderful conversation we had. So I'm so inspired today. The other thing I want to say is that I had to turn off my camera a couple times because I was really moved to tears by the young people speaking. What they had to say was just so profound. And it just inspired me, and I'm just so impressed. And I thank you, Sister Karen, for all that you're doing. And yeah, Malik, your question was really awesome in terms of what's going to be different. And some of it is so rudimentary in the sense that if we use the principles of the Nguzo Saba, which is the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, where we focus on purpose, creativity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, faith, cooperative economics. These are the kinds of things that I think will separate an Afrocentric immersion or Afrocentric school from what we see in the mainstream in terms of the fact that we will embrace values that our great mentor, Dr. Asante, who we embrace and love and who's endorsed the work that we're doing, will bring about. So Wendy and Natalie, who've been just amazing presenters tonight, I just have a question for Wendy because we talked about the whole aspect of Afrocentric schooling, but Wendy, you alluded to the fact because you were in, and as was Mr. Malik, who was a guidance counselor I know here in the city of Halifax at one of the largest high schools at Citadel High, who asked a question that you were both students in the Masters of Education in Lifelong Learning at Mount St. Vincent, which had a focus or concentration in Africentric leadership, where each cohort had 20 students of all of African descent, and the curriculum was, by all purposes, Afrocentric. So the thing that we are advocating for at the elementary and junior high level, in some ways we've tried it out at a higher level. And I think the oldest example of that is the transition year program at Dalhousie, right? And so, but I want to ask Wendy what that experience was like and how does she see that experience meshing into the conversation and ideas we are trying to germinate now for something in public schools.
Okay, I'm going to use one word, just one word. I'm going to wrap it all up. My experience with the Africentric cohort at the Mount was transformational. It was, to me, it was life-changing for me in terms of the lens that I now have about how I see things, how I view things, how I see myself as not on the margins, but at the center. So it has changed. And you mentioned Dr. Dorrington, like I remember her doing the course, the Institute up in North Preston, and I was in absolute awe of her. I think she worked at Nassau, and she was an intellectual and an academic. And so once again, I'll reiterate the experience that students have with Black representation is the same experience that I have as a lifelong learner. So representation, it really does matter. And the other thing I want to just piggyback on what Harvey was talking about a little earlier with the, including the parents and the pop-up school, the most difficult part of the pop-up school for me was telling parents that we didn't have any programming plan for them. There were at least a half a dozen parents who came to me after the pop-up and said, I want to learn this. Like, when's the next pop-up? Can you have a pop-up for us? And I know I'm not the only one that had that experience. I'm sure other people on the planning committee had the people pose the same question to them. The parents were just so thirsty for their own pop-up. They were like, the kids got the pop-up, but they wanted the pop-up too.
Right.
So just embracing everything from beginning to end and wrapping it all together. That's how we roll. You know what I mean? I'm about the big picture. We're not about, this piece and this disconnect. We are holistic people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would just only make sense that parents that didn't have representation, that didn't have the Africentric curriculum, that didn't have the setup and the model for learning, they missed that opportunity. And that's what parents were saying. At least a couple of them were saying, I missed the opportunity that you're giving to my kid. When can I get the opportunity as well?
Thank you, Wendy. I'm just going to ask you all if you can stay with us for about 10 more minutes, if you don't mind. And I'd like to acknowledge that one of our instructors, Kim Sparks, also mentioned that her daughter has been asking her, when's the next one? And she loved the fact that everyone that was at the pop-up looked like her. So again, we're hearing a lot about the importance of representation and the impact. And as Wendy said, from beginning to end, no matter how old you are, the impact of that representation really does matter. I'm now going to turn it back over to Dr. Miller, to Dr. Harvey, who's going to lead us with one more last video, and then I'll turn it over to our chair and leader, Karen, for some final comments.
You're the founder of the Africentric movement. Can you sort of give us in a nutshell, what is Africentricity and what inspired you to shape and advocate such a philosophy?
Well, Afrocentricity is a paradigm that says that African people must view themselves and be viewed as subjects of our own history and our own narrative, and that we are essentially mature and better off if we see ourselves as agents of history rather than as marginals to the European history or the Arab history or anybody else's history. We are centered within our own narrative, and we must use that centeredness as the point of our own investigations and inquiry. What gave me the inspiration to do it is because when I began to examine the situation of Black people everywhere, not just in North America, but in the Caribbean, in South America, and even on the continent of Africa, even in Europe, or wherever you see Black people, you see that for the most part, we are operating not on our own terms, but on somebody else's terms.
Why is it so difficult for us to begin to design and create the systems that we want to shape to represent us, to allow us that centeredness that you talked about? Why is it so difficult for us to accomplish some of those things?
Well, the reason it's difficult is because we have limited knowledge of our own history and our own culture. And this is, of course, by design. I mean, we have been colonized, we have been enslaved, and by the enslavement and the colonization of Black people, we have basically been put outside of our own history. So it's difficult for us to have the knowledge to do what we need to do. So there are some of us, of course, there have always been some of us who knew or who felt that there was something wrong, that we were not on our own path, that we were actually following the path of other people. And so those people have always been in the minority, but they've existed. I mean, we know that there have been Pan-Africanists before. We know that there have been people who have a sense of African agency before. But these people who have African agency and these people who are profoundly committed and dedicated to the rise of African consciousness are often the people who are not in control of our institutions, our state governments, and so forth. So once the state is controlled by people who are conscious, and then we have a cadre of conscious people who are acting out of the interest of black people, then we will see a change. And we're working toward that change. It hasn't come yet. Well, I guess the most major one in our history is Marcus Garvey. Garvey, in many ways, is a mentor to me, and I see him as one of the people who most desired to see the rise of African people. And I think in a way, Maulana Karenga's work on Kawaida was a precursor, because in the 1960s in the United States, where a lot of people were talking about civil rights and some other people were talking about political rights, he was talking about political rights, civil rights, and what he would consider human rights. His whole idea was that if you looked at the achievements of African people on the basis of our culture, what you see is that most of the time we have a broken culture. Our culture is in effect distorted, and it's distorted by living in the Western world. And how do you do that? You repair it. You have to repair it. This is why Kwanzaa was part of a restoration. It was part of if mature people have holidays, then why don't we have a holiday to celebrate ourselves? You see, so that is the key to Kwanzaa. But it's not just Kwanzaa that he created. I always tell people that you see people whose name Nia or Imani, all these names came out of Karenga's movement. This was his gift to us. Well, the notion of agency is really important, because that means that we are actors. We just act. I mean, to have a sense of agency means that you self-consciously do things in your own interest. That's agency. That you don't sit back and wait for other people to do things as if we are somehow beggars. And then African fidelity simply means that we have a loyalty to the interests of Africa. You cannot get me to do anything that is disloyal to Africa. And in that sense, the big question that I got from Hakeem Matabuti many years ago that black people need to ask is, I'm going to make this decision, but if I make this decision, is it in the best interest of African people? And that's one of the keys. And then the notion of centeredness means that we can't put ourselves in the margins ever. That we never, in any situation, people ask, what's the concept of beauty? We put ourselves right in the center of that question. Beauty is what we know when we look at ourselves, when we look at our people. That's the beginning of things. And then we began to talk about beauty elsewhere. But that is fundamental. You have to be centered in your own narrative. If you're not centered in your own narrative, you will never be mature. So that is what we say. And we will never have a renaissance. We will always be considered beggars for the ideas of other people. And then in terms of psychological, I think it was psychological location. That's right. Yeah, that psychological integrity that comes from our location. That is, if we're located in the center of our own narrative, then the psychological integrity is that my mind is straight. I'm not disoriented. I'm not dislocated. I have no sense of misorientation. I'm actually on the path that I should be on. So this notion of psychological integrity means that I am in sync with my reality, with my history, with my culture, and so forth. Well, we have to reward them. You see, people respond to rewards. So when people do good, you reward them. When they look good, we reward them. when we see sisters, for example, wearing their hair in a certain beautiful style, we reward that, you see. When we give contests for our children, we give contests for our children and we ask them to do things that are in the interest of African identity and culture, and we reward them. We give our children African names. We reflect ourselves. We show and demonstrate that we love ourselves, and that loving ourselves is a part of loving humanity. We are the first humanity we know. We know ourselves first. And then you can't skip over yourself and say you love everybody else before you love yourself. So when we do that, we nurture this idea of Afrocentricity and an African sense of self. We will see inexpressible joy. Number one, you would look at us and you say, wow, they're joyous people. That would be the first thing. Secondly, you will see incredible confidence, not just in the adults, but in the children themselves, because they know from whence they have come. There's no confusion in their mind. They are very clear. And thirdly, what you will see is an assertion on the part of African people that will allow us to compete with anyone in education, in economics, in science. You would see an incredible desire for technology. This would be because we are centered in our own selves, and we're able to respect other people because we respect ourselves. If we don't respect ourselves, we can't respect other people. And so this is key to us.
My name is Juliana Richardson, and I'm the founder and president of the History Makers, and you're watching ALI Television.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey, for collecting those inspiring words from Dr. Malefe, and it reminds us and reinforces why we do this work. And I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Karen Hudson, who's been an inspiration to so many Black learners, both at Auburn School and the other schools that she has touched, and the impact she has made in applying the Afrocentric principles in everything she does. So over to you, Karen, for final and closing remarks.
So good evening, and thank you, Barb, and to all the panelists. I just wanted to say it's been a very inspiring evening. The conversations that were provided by the speakers, and then also the questions. And so in terms of our philosophy of Afrocentricity, it speaks to both involvement in the design. Harvey spoke about that design of our own school. And you just heard Dr. Malefe says, when you develop something in the best interest of Black people, that whole philosophy of Ujima, that collective responsibility, we create then that foundation. We ground our children in what is unique to them, that is rich in knowledge and wisdom, and we nurture the best of who they are. And then they become our change agents. And this is what we're trying to do within the work of ALI. Our panelists spoke about the representation. It talked about how we all matter and what we can do. We're limitless in terms of the work. We show this over and over and over in terms of our thoughts and our ideas as being innovators. The ALI pop-ups is just a testament to what we can do. And I know the time is going to come where we are leaving our legacy, and we're going to do it the way that it needs to be done, where we invite everyone to be part of it. Just like the conversation this evening, all of you were part of it. So on that note, I just want to say thank you to Tanasia, Drayon, Natalie, Wendy, for your inspiration, for the words of wisdom, for the knowledge, and for your heartfelt information and your passion. Thank you for all the viewers and the mentors that were on the ALI in terms of mentoring this program and this whole philosophy To our moderator, Ms. Barr, for just keeping us on task and leading this discussion. To Harvey, who has been doing the technology or the technical part for us this evening, and the ALI team. So I want to just say thank you for all of us for viewing in, community, parents, students, teachers, educators, everyone who's on the call this evening. Thank you for viewing us on YouTube. Follow us on ALI TV. There's more to come. We're always creating and believing in the philosophy of centering and grounding each and every one in the purpose of who we are as Black people on this earth. Thank you. Have a great evening. And I'll turn it back over to Harvey.
Really, Bob could just say the final word.
Yeah,
I'm just a technical guy.
That's okay.
I'll turn it over to you for the technical part.
Again, we
Thank
just want to say a big heartfelt thank you. And we do want to mention that we will be having a busy summer. We're making plans now for all our possibilities. And we have talked about having parent and adult pop-ups. So that may be part of our plans in the summer, looking at, managing your wealth, trying to develop other skills in our parents and in our adults. We hope that you do stay tuned for that. And we will be looking for volunteers. So if you have enjoyed hearing tonight what you've heard, if you want to know how can you get more connected to the things we're doing, be it a volunteer, a mentor, whatever role you like to play, there's a space for you at ALI. And we'd like to connect with you as we continue to grow and let Nova Scotia, Canada know about the difference that an Afrocentric education can make in any learner. And we want you to know that Africentric Learning Institute is committed to that change. And with you, we can make all the things we talked about a reality. So we want to thank you tonight for joining us, for sharing your wisdom with us, for tuning in. And we encourage you to tell others to visit our YouTube channel. You can look at this over and over again and share it. And you'll also see other videos that we have also done. And we will continue to do our part to continue to educate people about the importance of Afrocentric education. So we thank you for your time this evening. And we know that you could be doing many other things, but you decided to join us. And we are appreciative of that. So have a good night and stay tuned for what's coming next with ALI Institute.
Thank you, Barb.
We could put on our mics and clap so we can hear some clapping.
Thank you.
Panelists. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Right.
Good night.
Night.
Night. Good night. Good night, everybody.
If it's still live, the launching of the flag. Stay tuned for that. Right? I didn't.
Want to do a plug? Want to do a plug?
Yeah. So. Does anybody want to take that plug? So I just omitted to mention that we'll be launching the Afrocentric flag. And as we say, it's when the Africentric Learning Institute gives the flag to Nova Scotia. And that will be happening this week. And I don't know, Wendy Lee, if you want to give any more details about when it will be able to view it, because it is your work. So I want to celebrate you as the designer of the flag.
Yeah, so the official flag raising / launch will happen on Monday, the holiday, Heritage Day, which also happens to be Flag Day. So it's a national recognition for Flag Day. It's the day, I think February 15th, that the Canadian flag was introduced. So we'll be introducing the African Nova Scotian flag on the same day. So we will be able to tag that day from now on as a day that the African Nova Scotian people celebrated unifying symbol. So a unifying symbol being the African Nova Scotian flag that now belongs to the people.
Hey.
So very excited.
Nova Scotian flag. Nova Scotian flag. First and foremost.
Can we purchase?
History will be made.
Oh, can we purchase? That was the question.
Oh yes, the order will be going in. I actually picked up the first order of flags and some other products that we ordered, and yes, they will be available for purchase very soon. We'll give you the details on Monday.
Before March 31st.
Budget.
Before, what you say?
Yes.
Good tip.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you all again. Stay
right.
tuned for Monday for the flag raising. It will be brought to as well, we hope, by Africentric Learning Institute.
Harvey, did you want to do one more
Um,
ALI plug for the Young, Gifted, and Black?
Yes.
Well, you know, you are the co-producer, so go for it.
So this is the 4th annual presentation of music, which is something that in our community we are always happy to be a part of. And so we, the Jam Productions, in cooperation with the Africentric Learning Institute, will be presenting Young, Gifted, and Black, which is a presentation of music. And we focus on young musicians and challenging them to learn a very deep music of our culture, which is jazz and blues. And then we also have a second section called Jazz Ain't Nothing But Soul, where we have older musicians and we focus on young women musicians. We have been presenting this now. This is our 4th year. We have a stellar lineup, and we'll be sending around not just a promotion on that. It will be simultaneous because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We will be doing a live presentation but the numbers will be very small because of, health and public safety regulations. There'll be an audience of 50 people. So because of that, we will also be simultaneously live streaming the presentation. So it will include some great music, of young people like Zoe Tolliver and Jamila and Latoya Downey Saunders, hers truly Zamani, the B Sharp Jazz Band, and many more. So it's going to be a wonderful opportunity. We always have a sellout event when it's live for the last 3 years, and this year it will be sold again, but a smaller crowd. But it's going to be lots of fun to promote an important part of our culture, which is our musical experience, especially stories of jazz and stories of blues. So stay tuned for that.
All right, cool. Since we're doing upcoming announcements, I just have one to mention. There will be a flyer going around looking for artists to design an African Nova Scotian license plate. And so that's the next project that ALI is going to be launching very shortly. So if you know any artists, we will be sending out a notice. Please let them know that we will be looking to design this. There will be a remuneration. We haven't set the remuneration yet, but that's going to be done over the next month and a half. So we'll be putting out a call very shortly, looking for artists to shortlist about 3 artists that we will then contract to come up with a design for an African Nova Scotian license plate. So your car will now look different.
And we should say that this is being done in
March,
partnership with the province of Nova Scotia. Has already endorsed this, and they're just waiting for us to make that happen. And this is already accepted. This will occur, that we will have not only our own African Nova Scotian flag by ours truly, Wendy Mertris, but we will also have an African Nova Scotian license plate. So we're just making some moves as African Nova Scotians.
Cool. That's it.
And the graphic book. You mentioned the graphic book as well, Harvey, if you want to mention the graphic
go
book.
for it. Well, that's Karen. Karen is leading that one. We said we're going to have a busy summer, right?
The young people graphic novel. There's a graphic novel.
Yes.
Yes.
So lots of
We're done. We're done for the night.
All right. Lots to stay tuned for. Good night, everyone.
Stay tuned. Okay.
All right. Good night. I'm leaving.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.